Hey, this is Steve Bloom, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You are now on the inside of what I like to call the circle of trust.
We are all connected in the great circle of life.
You know something, Bert? What? I think you and I are going in circles.
It feels like we're going in circles.
The circle is now complete. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
Because it's a circle.
Yeah, we heard about the circle. Yes, we're familiar with shapes.
Hi, this is Chuck.
This is Greg.
And this is Dan, and we are Talking in Circles, brought to you by the Geekcast Radio Network, the podcast where we are ready for some football. And I know, sports and geeks, they don't always coincide. You know, football and geeks scatter like mice when you turn on the lights. But
see, I don't know about that, because I go into the comic book store, and I get compliments on my Vikings cap.
Yeah, that's true. There is some crossover. There is some crossover for sure. But we're going to do a little... We don't talk sports here a great deal, but we're going to do some NFL preview stuff and get into some fantasy. And really, if anything, talk about why we think geeks should embrace sports more than they do. Like, if you're afraid of sports, you hate sports, and you're thinking, I'm going to skip this episode, give it a second chance, maybe listen and see what you think. You might be surprised. But before we get into the NFL talk, how's the week been going for you guys?
Terrible, just terrible.
Terrible.
Nah, I don't know. I really didn't do anything this week other than kind of work around the house and everything, so I didn't have much time to do anything exciting.
Yeah, it's that time of year, spring cleaning. Well, I guess it's fall cleaning almost. It's weird that fall stuff's already out. Like, I went to get beer the other day, and they had Oktoberfest already out and pumpkin stuff. I'm like, we can never celebrate the time we're in. It's like, we're always looking to the next thing.
And the Halloween candy was out literally 2 weeks ago here.
Oh, Jesus.
Candy corn really? Is disgusting, by the way.
You ever hear Lewis Black's bit on candy corn? It's like, you know, every candy corn that's ever invented was invented like 50 years ago. They've never invented it. Just keep bringing it out because no one likes that stuff.
I'd rather eat earwax. It's comparable to me.
Yeah. I thought that's what it was.
To be fair, I am a big fan of earwax. It's just that, you know, that snack that keeps on giving.
Yeah. It's a daily dose every day. Whoa.
Oh, God. So, Greg, how's your week been going?
It's all right, but I woke up one morning to find something like really wrong with my hand. For my pointer finger, down at the bottom, kind of where it extends into the palm of my hand, it's got an extra bump there. It's kind of like a bone like got extended out more, and I got like some kind of spur or something really weird going on.
You bit by a radioactive spider by any chance?
No, because I think that would be more of a skin lumping up, but this is more of the bone. I'm not sure if it's because I crack my knuckles all the time or what, but I do that constantly, and anymore it feels like it needs to be cracked, but it doesn't. So I'm trying really, really hard not to crack my fingers, and it is driving me up a wall. I so want to crack my fingers so bad.
Funny thing is, if you actually did drive up a wall, you probably would crack your fingers. So it's
and a lot of other things as well.
Yeah.
Unless I had the Batmobile from what is it, the third or second one, or where it goes up a wall.
The second one.
Is it the second one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, I heard this weird thing where this doctor apparently one time, he was like very old, like in his 70s or something, and he did like a basically a social experiment with himself where like across the span of his life for like 50 years or something, like one hand he would always like crack the knuckles and the other hand he wouldn't. And when he got really old, there was literally no difference between his hands. So I don't know if it varies from person to person or if there's just nothing to that or what, but you can take it as you may, I guess. But
I'm just wondering if maybe I just took it and cracked it too far, like pushed on the knuckle too far or something like that, and maybe popped out a piece of the bone without realizing it. Ow. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on. If there's anybody with a doctorate out there that
Doogie Howser, where are you?
Medical, yeah. Let me know. That and the whole white poop situation. I'm still waiting on to hear what that's about.
Solving Greg's problems here on Geekcast Radio After Dark.
Yeah, I don't feel like going to my actual doctor. He's kind of an asshole.
Let me trust these total strangers that listen to us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Podcast a day will keep the doctor away, as they say.
How about you, Dan? I hope you don't have any medical issues going on like I do.
No, my week's been. I'm doing tons of work right now. It's our busy season. I've been saying that for a while because it has been, but we had a fun day today because it's really crazy and we're working a lot of hours. We've been doing a few things to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. We've done different theme days and whatnot, and today was like each row that we work at.
Naked work day.
Each row that we work at would pick a theme and then like dress up as that theme or something like that. Like my row, we picked travel destinations, so we all dressed up as different travel destinations and put up decorations. And some people really went crazy with it. Like this one row, like dressed up as like they created a story about the department, and then they all dressed up as different characters of the department. And someone dressed up as Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians, and all the other people were dressed up as the Dalmatians. And yeah, I work at a fourth grade classroom apparently. I don't know, but it was a lot of fun. It did lighten the mood because we're like really intense right now, so it's kind of nice to have this like craziness going on. So I'm walking down the hallway and I see Santa Claus, and then I see someone dressed up as a convict, and then I see someone dressed up as one of the village people. It was just like a normal day at work. So
the day I would propose, right?
Would it be Naked Day?
No, it would be Amelia Clark Day, where everybody dresses up like Khaleesi from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to dress up as Khaleesi because that would be bad for everyone. I maybe dress up as one of her dragons. Oh, was that a spoiler?
You would have to sit on somebody's shoulder the whole day of work.
Yeah.
Or in a cage.
But besides that, I've been I started using this new app. I'm trying to get healthier, eat healthier, and get back to exercise. So I started using this app called like the MyFitnessPal app. So I track everything I eat and all my exercise and whatnot. And I've also given up soda completely, which I've did it before, and then I got back into the habit of drinking it, and now I'm trying to give it up completely. So if I start snapping every so often, I apologize. It's just a lack.
Did you turn into my finger while you're dieting? What's up?
Just a lack of caffeine intake. It's been a while since I've had real caffeine, so just quitting cold turkey, and it can be tough. Like not crack. I've given up crack. That's what I've done. But no, soda can be like crack, just with the amount of caffeine. It's tough, but I've been doing pretty good. I'm on like my 5th day now, so I don't get chips though like they do for the other things. So it's not. I just have a little countdown in my book.
5 days sober.
Exactly.
From soda.
From Mountain Dew, which is just as dangerous as anything.
This is turned into the Jay and Silent Bob Get Old podcast.
a lot less sex talk though, so.
Well, like you said, from you guys maybe not, but
there is a little bit of a withdrawal from caffeine. Like if you go from drinking a lot to nothing, like you can get like some pretty bad headaches and stuff.
Yeah, that's basically what I've been dealing with. So giving up caffeine. I mean, I've had like some really low calorie Snapple stuff, which had some caffeine in it, but which I'm drinking right now. So
what's that made from, by the way?
What's that made from? I believe it's the best stuff on earth, but I think that's incorrect. So
that's what it is. No, you're right.
Yeah. But besides all the health talk, and welcome to Health Podcast with Dan, Chuck, and Greg. But besides all that, Greg, have you been able to do anything else? You catch up with any more Lord of the Rings? You've been reading anything? Yeah.
I actually have gotten some reading done. No, it's not an actual novel. It's a novel that has been made into a graphic novel. If you've caught any of that, if you understood any of that, which I have said, I actually read a Neil Gaiman book.
It's like the inception of literature. It's like 3 levels deep.
I read a Neil Gaiman book called The Graveyard Book, and this is the first volume of the graphic novel. So it kind of leaves you on a little bit of a cliffhanger. And essentially what takes place is this whole family gets murdered, except for this little baby, like really tiny little baby in a crib, jumps out of the crib and then walks off towards this graveyard.
Seems legit so far.
Yeah, it seems totally legit.
Is this little baby Stewie?
No, it's not Stewie. He does not have a football type of head, even though that would totally go with today's podcast. But he escapes, and so the guy that's killed the rest of his family is like, oh crap, but he's telling himself he's still got time and everything. So we kind of we only hear about him every once in a while, like little whispers in the back of the storyline that progresses through the rest of this book. But the little boy walks out to the graveyard and is found by the ghosts that live there, and the one ghost didn't have any kids when she was alive, so she wanted to adopt this little boy, and everybody's like, no, you can't adopt a little boy, you can't live in the graveyard. And then what about his parents and everything? And the ghost of the boy's mother appears and is like, help my baby, we've been murdered, blah, and then kind of fades away before they could get rest of the story. So there's a big hubbub in the graveyard about whether he should be allowed to, but they can't get him any food because they're not out of the graveyard, so there's a whole bunch of rules set up. But there is a vampire that's allowed to stay there.
Sorry.
So he's kind of the boy's guardian. So the vampire essentially becomes his guardian because figure of death comes in and tells the people of the graveyard that the little boy's got free range of the graveyard. And essentially for the rest of the book, you're kind of going along, seeing how this boy grows up. It doesn't have a whole ton of action, but there's interesting aspects of learning the whole culture of the dead and different like vampires, werewolves, stuff like that. And you find out about different realms. So it's kind of an interesting take on all these different horror tropes, but kind of levels them back to something that maybe us living people could kind of relate to through experiencing it with the boy's name is Bod, by the way, because his name is Nobody. Okay. His name is Nobody Owens.
Nobody knows.
So, yep. And so it gets shortened to Bod. And so he learns all these fun things about the graveyard and being dead and all this other stuff. So I thought it was an interesting take, and it's written by Neil Gaiman, so it's got to be good. It's like Smuckers.
I'm just waiting for the time Neil Gaiman teams up with Gizmo del Toro, and then like the geek community just implodes on itself. So.
Oh yeah, they're having like nerd virgins are orgasming all over the place, as you said that. But it's really good, and I think the artwork's really good. For each different chapter of the book, they give you different artists throughout, which I don't normally care for, but the artwork was really well done and kind of similar all the way through. You could see kind of the people all came from at least similar styles, but the artists are, if you know them, because I haven't heard any of these guys, Kevin Nowlin, P. Craig Russell, Tony Harris, and Scott Hampton, Galen Showman, Jill Thompson, and Stephen B. Scott.
So would you say this is more like a comedic take? Or is it more
straightforward?
There's a
little bit more comedy. There's got some little comedic moments. It's not really a comedy, though. You're just kind of going through this boy's life. It's not really a horror because you're not getting really scared by anything, but there's kind of horror elements to it. There's a little bit of adventure, but it's just neat kind of figuring out the culture of the dead, I guess you would say.
So when reading the graphic novel, does it have you at all interested in actually reading the physical novel? Or do you feel like
because getting like the information and it's a complete story and everything, I feel like. But I feel like if I went to the book, that there would definitely be more description going on of some things and a little bit more detail going into what's going on, maybe. But the visuals in this book fill it out for the most part. But it would be interesting to see all the little details, because it is kind of had to be translated from Neil Gaiman novel form into graphic novel form, because they are two different types of media, if you ask me. Plus, it's Neil Gaiman once again, so I think going to book, you get his more of his language into it and more of his flavor into the mix.
Yeah, I know. Marvel's done that a lot with different novels, some classic novels. They did a lot with some Stephen King books as well, where they're taking it in.
Yeah, I read some of the Marvel illustrated classics. I was reading the H.P. Lovecraft, and that got me into Lovecraft a little bit. And I think the Marvel editions were better because H.P. Lovecraft has a little bit more of a whimsical language going on there that can be hard to understand, I think, sometimes.
I went through some of the stuff for Stephen King, like his The Stand, which is a book I really like a lot. And the graphic novel was pretty good. It's just such a long story to do. That's a really long comic. I never finished it all, but and also wanted to check out the Wizard of Oz books, which I've heard are really good.
Yeah, by Scotty Young.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love his artwork. I forget who wrote that, but I'm a big fan of his artwork, and I'm always checking out his blog. And
he has he's doing the Rocket, I believe, is his
yeah,
series.
And that's actually pretty good. He does the writing and he does the pencils, and I believe somebody else inks maybe, and somebody else does the colors and the lettering. But that was actually pretty good. I'm about 2 issues into that, and that one's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. I did get to watch 2 things that I'll touch upon rather quickly. The first one was the movie done by Jon Favreau, most recently, the guy who directed Iron Man and Iron Man 2, and that is Chef. He kind of went back to his more indie roots and did this movie about him as a high-powered chef. And after a certain incident with a critic, he ends up kind of having to reevaluate what he does and kind of start all over. And it's very much a mirror, I think, of his actual movie career. He says a lot about criticism in general in this movie because he has a huge issue with his food critic. You have this owner of the restaurant who's telling him what to do and doesn't give him any freedom. You can definitely see that's probably him working with franchise movies and being told what to do and not having any freedom, and going back and being more independent and being able to do what he really truly wants to. So there's definitely a mirror there from real life and story, and it's honestly just a really sweet movie. There's not much conflict going on. It's a lot of people call it very food pornish because the way it shoots its food, it does. And it's interesting because when it starts off, like, I'm not a foodie by any means. I'm kind of simple when it comes to food, but like the food he creates, it's just like, it's fun to watch and see being put together. I know, Chuck, with you being an engineer, you might just enjoy like the engineering angle of it and just how all these little bits are kind of put together and how it becomes this piece of food, and it almost looks like too good to eat. You're like, it's kind of.
I just like the Food Network, so this is aces for me right off the bat.
Yeah, and so he starts off there, and then it gets into more like a food truck, which then it gets into food that I'm like, that food looks delicious because it's just like sandwiches and Cubans and whatnot. So it's a fun film. It's really lighthearted, some good comedy in there as well. Jon Favreau does a really great job. It's nothing overly serious. It's a really good movie, I think, to watch with a lot of people because it's a general comedy, nothing too abstract by any means. It's like a nice little indie. It's like a feel good film. It does get a little bit melodramatic at the end, but the heart of the story is like this father trying to connect with his son. And it works out pretty well. A lot of stuff in there about social networking and whatnot through Twitter, and a lot of Twitter jokes, which you can take early. But it's a good film. I definitely would recommend it, especially if you drag like Food Network. I'm sure you would get a lot of enjoyment out of it just watching all the food be made, because it's really shot well. It's well directed. So it might be, besides Iron Man, like Favreau's best directed film. So.
So is Favreau stars in the movie too, or he just directs it?
He stars and directs. I shouldn't have mentioned that. Yeah, he's a lead actor. It's funny though, because I feel like it's his dream, because his ex-wife is Sofia Vergara from Modern Family. His girlfriend is Scarlett Johansson. I'm like, okay, Jon Favreau. It's like I get being a good cook is you'll have a lot of luck there, but let's squeeze the brakes a little bit here. Your girlfriend is Scarlett Johansson, and then your ex-wife is Sofia Vergara. I don't know about that.
Just imagine him directing the second Iron Man when Scarlett Johansson came in. He's like, "Oh yes, thank God!" And he's on the director's chair, just drooling all over himself when Scarlett's on set.
I will say there's no make-out scenes or anything like that, so he at least didn't objectify them in any way. It's funny though, because it does feel like he did get all of his friends to be little bit parts. Dustin Hoffman shows up, Robert Downey Jr. shows up. Every small part is some huge actor. So for an indie film, it's really star-studded. So
did Vince Vaughn make an appearance at all?
No, he didn't. Surprisingly, I was waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
They never made it to Vegas though, so maybe that was the issue. It's a good film. I definitely would recommend it. It should be on DVD and Blu-ray rather shortly. So. And the next film I won't say much about, because there's not a great deal to say about it, not because it's bad, but just because it's a very interesting concept film. And it's starting one of the man of the years, one of the biggest, hottest names in acting right now and geekdom, and that is Tom Hardy. And I don't know have you guys heard of the film Lock at all?
No.
Okay.
Pop and Lock, we're dancing.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Tom Hardy starts as a dance instructor. And the youth center is going to be shut down unless he can win the Pop and Lock contest. Luckily, no, I'm joking. No.
Hello, everybody. Let's pop and lock.
I would love to see Bane in a dance contest. Speaking of Bane, did anyone see the image of that was floating around the internet of during the filming of Dark Knight? There was a wedding happening, and then you see Tom Hardy walking down the street in his Bane gear. He's just hanging out, waving to the people in the wedding party. It's just really awkward and funny to look at, but I digress. Now, the movie Lock, it came out a little early this year. It's coming out on DVD and Blu-ray now, and it's a really simple story. It's a really simple concept, but sometimes with that simple concept, it can be complicated. Literally, the story starts off, and I don't want to give too much away because there isn't a lot of plot here, so the more I say, the more I give away. But basically, the story starts off with Tom Hardy. He plays this character Locke, and he's a construction worker, and he's starting in the car. He's in the car, and he's about to take a left-hand turn, and eventually changes his mind, and he ends up making a right-hand turn, and he starts driving. And he has
there's a giant bug on the back of his neck.
Exactly. And then monsters come. No, he starts driving, and
mine was a Doctor Who reference, by the way. You kind of went with it, and it was kind of like that. So
he drives into the TARDIS, and then the sonic screwdriver, and then the I don't know, but anyways, so he has a destination to get to, and the entire movie is him going to this destination, and it's him going through this series of phone calls to basically try to get everything corrected, find. I don't want to give away too much, but there's issues that pop up, and he has to try to fix all these issues by the time he gets to this destination. So the entire movie, 99% of this movie takes place in this car. Some shots from the outside and whatnot, but it is just gives you an understanding of how great an actor Tom Hardy is, because it works completely. It's never overly dramatic. It's well paced. It's really interesting. I mean, I know some people might get bored because literally it's just a dude having a conversation, which might sound pretentious, but it works. And it's really well directed because the space is used really well. Some really great camera work within the car, outside the car. So it's really well directed too. Some great lighting techniques. And it's kind of interesting how they made it. Basically what they did was Tom Hardy drove this, because it almost happens in real time. Tom Hardy did this route 3 times. And during the driving, people would call in from the studio and they would have these conversations, and on the GPS he would have all his lines. So it was basically happening as is. So it was just interesting that this was all just kind of happening the way it happens in the movie, So it's just a really cool concept, and I'm interested in concepts like this. I'm a sucker for like movies that take place in one location or in one day, and this does both. And again, it's really rested upon Tom Hardy's shoulders, who just does a really great performance. So I would say it's not nearly as accessible as something like Chef, but if you're into kind of movies that are, they like to do some interesting things, change things around, definitely check it out. So if you're a huge Tom Hardy fan, I would also check it out. So it's interesting too, because like he can really give huge performances, like really big characters with a lot of emotion. That's character is not necessarily like that. He's more subdued, but it's done well. So I probably made a lot of people really disinterested in it and some interested in it, which is, I think, I don't know, the way you do.
Is he naked at any point during this movie like he was in Bronson?
He is not naked. He is fully
Thank
clothed.
God. Then that should attract tons of people, because it was scary to see his penis during Bronson.
Yeah. He got naked a lot in that movie.
Yes, he did. It was, Chuck, have you seen it?
No.
Don't, because it was kind of crazy, silly, like just out there, and plus you see his junk a lot.
I like Bronson, but also Nicholas Winding Refn is probably one of my favorite directors right now. So I do enjoy his style, but it is a wonky film for sure. But it could turn off a lot of people because it is out there in a lot of different ways. But yeah.
No pun intended.
Oh. You understand why he's called Tom Hardy. Anyways,
I think he should be named Tom Smalley.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, you say that now.
Moving along now.
But we're going to take a quick break right now, and we come back. We'll be getting into some NFL talk. So getting you geared up for the NFL season, which is only, honestly, a few days away. Kind of crazy. So we'll see you in a bit.
On the Simplistic Reviews podcast, we talk movies. We talk TV. We talk.
Hello, Julie, what the heck are you doing?
Trying to make our spots sound more exciting by adding explosions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could have got the point across with sound effects, not the real thing.
Download the show on iTunes or at simplisticreviews.blogspot.com.
I'm sure your insurance company will cover that.
No, they won't.
No, they probably won't.
Every week on the In Session Film Podcast, you can expect to hear reviews on all of the latest movies, big films, small films, and everything in between. We'll also do top 3 segments relating back to our main review. We discuss all of the latest movie news and rumblings, as well as have movie series and other fun segments. And we always talk about the films that we're watching and why you should watch them or not watch them as well. If you want to learn more about the In Session Film Podcast, check us out online at InSessionFilm.com. You can hear our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, and so much more. In fact, you can listen to everything we have straight from our website. Again, that is InSessionFilm.com. Download our podcast, check us out, and come join us every week. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, and welcome back. And before we get into our talk about football, we got some winners to announce of our own here. A few weeks ago, we had our infamous action hero draft, and we got a lot of great feedback. So very happy to see that. A lot of votes and to claim who won, Chuck, Greg, or myself. So it was actually quite a tight race. It came down to the nitty gritty here,
and a lot of votes too.
Yeah, a great deal of votes. So, but there can only be one champion. So we'll go through this. And Greg and I, unfortunately, came in second and third place. We were only one vote apart, but Greg had 31% of the vote, and I had 32%.
How the mighty have fallen.
I know. And then, of course, that means the winner chicken dinner goes to that of Chuck with a whopping 37% of the votes. So
apparently, Chuck just entered a porno.
No, it was a club for winners.
So a porno, isn't a
strip
porno?
club for winners, and they're in the champagne room.
So, Chuck, any speech or anything like that, or?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody that voted for me, and I'd like to thank my action heroes for for having good reputations and good movies in the past.
They pulled it out there for you. They put it on the line, and
yeah. It pays to have clutch players. They came through and accounted, and they really put me over the top. But see, more importantly than winning this, though, that means I get the first pick in the next draft we do.
Nice. And of course, this is probably the biggest thing that's happened to Jean-Claude Van Damme in quite a long time. So
yes. Maybe he can afford a haircut now.
Or dinner. It's probably more important.
I feel like when he gets a haircut, it would like hurt him, and he'd be like,
He'd lose his power. He would not be able to do the splits. You would just see him, looking at two chairs that are slightly apart with a really sad look on his face. It's like,
I can't wait to see him, like, if when he's like 85 years old and he can like still do a split or something.
My legs may be broken, but
hopefully his hips don't just give out while he's doing the split. But mad props to Greg for doing those awesome movie posters. That definitely put a pretty sweet accent on the whole deal there. So.
Oh yeah, those are very nice for sure. Better than most real movie posters you see nowadays, honestly. So
yeah, I actually do think it beat out some of those.
Very cool, Greg. Very cool. Thank you for that. We really I gave Greg a lot of work to do, and he pulled through. So appreciate that.
I always do.
Very nice. But again, what we're here for, and that is, of course, the whole NFL football season starting in just a few days after this episode drops. And I thought we just started the conversation just, casually out of it. We've talked about sports a little bit, but not a great deal. So let's start with how big of football fans are we? Have we been a football fan all of our life? Has it something we recently got into? Chuck, I guess I'll start with you, because we know when we did our Part of Your 6 episode, one of the people that you would invite was Dan Marino. So we know you're a huge Dolphins fan. So what kind of got you into the whole phenomenon and religion that is football?
Well, I guess basically football became a love of mine because of my dad. My dad was a huge Dolphin fan, so I'd kind of watch games with him growing up, and I just became the next generation of Dolphins fan. And he actually has his story is more interesting than mine of how he started liking them. He was telling me when he was a kid, he never really paid attention to football that much, and in 1972, the Super Bowl was between the Miami Dolphins and the Washington Redskins, and my dad and my uncle, they never really paid attention to football, but for some reason they bet on this game, and they each picked a particular team. My dad happened to take the Dolphins, and my uncle took the Redskins. And my dad got the better end of that deal that particular year, because the Finns won and became the only team to ever go undefeated in the Super Bowl era. So, pretty interesting story about how he came to like them. And he followed them, ever since then. My uncle's followed the Redskins ever since then to this day. So, pretty cool there. I kind of just took up the mantle, watching games with him and stuff. And of course, I had the pleasure of watching Dan Marino play in my era, since he kind of broke onto the scene right around the time I was born. So I've never gotten to enjoy a Super Bowl victory in my time yet, but just those moments of watching Marino work his magic were quite memorable. And I really enjoy watching the games with my dad and everything, and it's a lot of fun, win or lose. Definitely more fun if we win, but
yeah, it's one of those things where you lose that Sunday, and then the rest of your week is kind of just doesn't feel right. You're just
yeah, I know. Yeah. It's just weird. It sucks you right in, and on the weeks you get a win, you're just pumped. You're excited in every other aspect of your life, and when you lose, you're oh man, this sucks.
I know.
Not going anywhere.
If the Giants, I'll get into to my team, but yeah, if they lose, and then you're just not. I'm just gonna stay away from ESPN for that week. I'm just wearing it all off. Yeah. So I just don't want to relive the highlights of them losing over and over again. Which for me, my story is very similar to Chalk, in the fact that like Chalk, I became a fan because of my father. My dad was a big Giants fan, and that kind of came down to me which was interesting because none of my other siblings, I'm the last of 5 kids, were really into football. But for whatever reason, I've always been into sports as a kid, played it a lot. I mean, that's all we did during the summer was play football or baseball, and even in high school and whatnot, I played a lot of sports. So got into football a great deal, and I've been a Giants fan my entire life. It's been an up and down season, unfortunately. Unlike Chuck, or I should say, fortunately, unlike Chuck, I had the pleasure of watching my team win the Super Bowl twice in the last few years. Which one of the greatest Super Bowls ever in 2008, as they beat 18 wins to 1 giant loss against those pesky New England Patriots, and then again, just for the fun of it, they did it a few years later. But last year, unfortunately, not so much. Starting 0-7, it was a tough year. But yeah, it was the same thing. Like my dad got into it, and it's one of those things you kind of can bond over still. Now that I live in Baltimore, my dad still lives in Scranton. He sends me their schedule. He honestly, when we're recording this, the Giants are playing right now in the preseason game, and he's texting me updates as if I couldn't find them out myself. But I let that slide. He tends to text me the score. He emails me, or he doesn't email me. He mails me all the articles about the Giants and whatnot. So it's interesting. It keeps me up and whatnot. It's just something.
Yeah,
cool. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that's all fun stuff. Like just the bonds it builds, like you were saying, the camaraderie, like great stuff.
Chuck and we've been friends since 2nd grade, and a lot of that was playing football. Like Chuck's been a Dolphins fan for as long as I can remember. That's always been a huge thing. And when we were in college, we went to go see Dan Marino get inducted to the Hall of Fame, which was great to see. And I'm not a Dolphins fan, but it was, I had to be a Dolphins fan on that day because I've always been a Dan Marino fan since he's from Western PA and whatnot, the pride of Pittsburgh. But yeah. So it's always been a cool thing to talk about, and we've got into fantasy, which we'll get into a little bit. But Greg, I know your route to football was a lot different than ours. So what kind of got you into football? I know you're not into it as much as we are, but I know you've kind of got into it more in the last few years.
Yeah, I got into it back in the day through my next door neighbor, who was my best friend, and I mostly did it to be in and cool and have something to talk to him about. And mostly it was me with the apparel wearing and not so much watching the games. But back then I was a Dolphins fan, like Chuck has been. But I was a Dolphins fan because my neighbor was a Dolphins fan. And then I kind of fell out of it and fell out of the friendship with him for the most part. I still see him every once in a while. Maybe I'll see him again at the Baltimore Comic-Con because I saw him there last year, which is weird because we're both from Scranton. And
I should mention, this is always this ongoing joke we've been having for a long time with Greg, is that no matter where we go, he runs into somebody he knows. Like literally one time when we were in a cornfield in a corn maze, it's like Greg runs into somebody. It was just this ongoing joke. And I live in Baltimore.
Complete darkness too. He found the person that he knew.
Yeah, I live in Baltimore. I go to the Baltimore Comic-Con. I don't run into anybody I know, really.
You did.
I did. Yeah, of course though. Chuck or Greg, we could go to Antarctica and it'd be like, "Hey, Greg," it's like, "What the hell?"
I'm not that social either. My social life has been kind of dwindling lately, so it's a lot harder for me to find people that I know at this point. So I think you guys are safe in Antarctica now.
You never know.
But I kind of dropped out of football even more after the friendship kind of broke up. But then I started hanging out with you guys, and you guys talk a lot of sports and everything. And then we started up the fantasy football league and everything. And I started watching the games because I was invested in it through the fantasy football stuff, and I had to learn everything. And I've become a little bit more educated, and I actually picked out my own favorite team for myself this time around. I mostly picked them out because my favorite player is Adrian Peterson, and that's because I drafted him as my running back the first year I played, and it was his rookie year, and he did freaking phenomenal. So that just totally got me on his side and totally got me into the Vikings. The team hasn't been really great through the years. Been better some years, but a lot worse other years, and pretty much AP just carries the whole team on his back for the most part.
Yeah, they had that one year where they were so close to going to the Super Bowl, but Brett Favre had that awful interception, and then was it the Saints ended up going, or the Packers? I forget which it was that year. But
yeah, I don't remember either. But yeah, I remember that. That's when they still had what the hell's his name as the coach, and I think that was like the year after that he got fired as head coach.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the Vikings might be decent this year. I don't think they'll be as bad as they were last year.
Yeah, but they still have Castle as quarterback. I don't understand that at all. They drafted quarterback first round, and they are still using like one of their 3 quarterbacks from last year. So I'm not.
I say give it like 4 games, and I'm sure after that Teddy Bridgewater will start.
Castle's pretty good quarterback though.
Yeah, but he did horrible last year. It was him and 3 other quarterbacks, and all of them did horrible.
Yeah, you'll see.
It's like giving it to somebody that you know what I mean by giving it to somebody that he's got this position, position.
Yeah, I mean they have to earn it though through training camp and preseason and everything. So, I mean that's kind of telling me that Bridgewater isn't quite ready yet.
He earned it, Chuck. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I
put the work in. I'm winking while I'm saying these emphasized words.
Yeah, it's tough with like rookie quarterbacks because you have some that you'll let them sit for a while, some that'll start right away, but some with mixed success. Like RG3 was great his rookie year, and then he hasn't done well since. And I think Castle's going to be better this year. He's in the system for a little bit longer. He's coming in with he's got a better offensive coordinator now. So I think it's Nerve Turner, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, I believe so.
Who's not a great coach, but he's a great coordinator. So I think he'll.
You mean he's not a great coach after all those years in San Diego?
No. No, not so much. But all those mediocre years in San Diego, and I still don't know how he held that job for so long. You talked about someone doing favors. I think that might have been it. But you touched upon fantasy football, which I think is a great segue into what we can get into next. And I know, when I started the episode, I talked about how a lot of geeks hate sports, and I can understand that. There's issues with it, but I think inherently there's something about fantasy football that I think even geeks can get behind. I think it's like the ultimate role-playing game, really. You have a team, you have different attributes, there's a lot of strategy to it. So do you guys think that someone who maybe isn't into football, Greg, I guess I can start with you because you weren't into football, but fantasy football got you into it. So what about fantasy football that kind of became appealing?
Well, it was definitely a chance for me to talk to you guys over long distances. That was before the podcast of trying to keep up with you guys. It was fantasy football, and that only comes around once a year, so that was a great thing. But nerd-wise, it does kind of play a lot like a kind of a Dungeons and Dragons, except you really don't have anything to level up with. And you can get really nerdy, and you can put all the math into it of adding up all the points and assigning points for different accomplishments and add those points up, which math nerds can really get into and accountants can do on their free time. So there's something for that. But if you're not into that, don't worry. You could do it on the computer like we do, and the computer does all the addition and subtraction for you. So that it kind of runs a little bit more like the video game Skyrim, where they do Skyrim or Fallout. So you got that kind of nerdy aspect. Plus, it's like that, but you don't have any control over the players. So that's the little bit of the downfall of it. You don't really get to choose like what those characters, quote unquote, do, but you do get to pick your lineup. I have tried to convince others with this argument, other nerds, because I did play D&D for a little bit. I was terrible at it, though. Fantasy football is a lot easier. So if you're a nerd that wants to play Dungeons and Dragons, but it's too complex for you, fantasy football might be your route.
Yeah, and just to give you some, to put that in perspective, Greg, who probably was in the football the least out of nearly everyone in the league, has won twice. I've never won. Chuck, you won once, right?
Yeah.
We've been doing it since, I don't know, it's been about 7 years now or so.
Yeah.
And then we had one guy win that never logged into the site all season.
Yeah, our friend Dan, who we've talked about a few times. And this year we usually do a 10-team league. This year we have 12 players, and we have actually added a few new additions of some podcast people, JD from In Session Film, DJ, and Matt from Simplistic Review. So that's kind of cool to expand it even further. So
little interleague play there.
Yeah. I've been on In Session Film. I haven't been on Simplistic Reviews, but DJ and Matt have been on MR Weekly a few times. So their podcast is great. So it'll be fun. We'll sure we have some. We've already started a little bit of a Twitter war, seeing what will happen to the person that loses. I think DJ said that the person who loses needs to watch what's that guy's name? Ewing Bull or whatever, that horrible director who does all the video game movies.
Oh, shit, what's his name? Fuck. It was close enough with that.
Yeah.
I think people understand.
Yeah, he's an awful director. Watching one of his movies and reviewing it. So, which would be awful. So
I've actually watched a couple. I haven't reviewed them, but I have watched a couple of those.
I think the one he mentioned was Rampage, which I don't think is based off a game. It's his original property, which is even scarier because that dude is just he makes awful movies.
He makes awful decisions.
Yeah, but yeah, I think. And Chuck, I mean, I guess I'll go to you next because you were in the fantasy football before I was, and you kind of got me into it. And honestly, before I got huge, I think you started off, I think, just doing it on your own. So what kind of attracted you to fantasy football?
I guess it was just something that, it was an offshoot of actual football, so I just wanted to check it out. And I'm always into anything to do with the NFL. I watch a lot of, the shows during the season, like some of those shows they have on ESPN. I listen to a lot of sports radio, and, when that started coming out, I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. It's another way to connect to the game for me. And it was just a hobby of mine that was so, I guess kind of consuming that, kind of like comics. You just want to check out more stuff.
Yeah.
Expand into other branches, kind of comics goes into animated movies and TV shows and regular movies and stuff. So you want to kind of expand your horizon. So I guess it was something like that, but yeah, I enjoyed it right from the get-go. I'm a big fan of games of strategy and stuff like that, and it's basically like a chess match. You're trying to pick your lineup based on who you're playing and how your guys have been playing and stuff like that. So there's certainly a lot of luck involved, but
yeah,
definitely a lot of strategy too.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with so much outside your hands. Something like an injury. If your first draft pick gets injured, then you're like, oh, geez. And we've done the action hero draft, we've done the superhero draft, and sometimes, honestly, I think one of the funnest things of of fantasy football is the actual draft. I think that is, and it's just really exciting. And that is kind of it is exactly that. It's a fantasy draft,
which goes very much like the two drafts that we had on our podcast.
Yeah, you have all the players, all the skill position players available, and you try to combine and make the ultimate team.
A lot of cursing as well.
Yeah. Unlike with the action hero draft and the superhero draft, the people that you're trying to select are very more finite. So, and like Greg mentioned, Adrian Peterson, and a lot of people want him because he's amazing. And he's, like we mentioned, the biggest badass in the planet right now, based upon our rankings. So that's a lot of fun in itself, just trying to create that ultimate team. There's a lot of rivalry there too, and it's interesting too, as if you're a fan of NFL football and your football team is crapping the bed, well, at least you have fantasy to go back on.
That's true.
The bad thing is if both are crapping the bed, then it's just like a double whammy. It's like, oh, geez, it's awful. So, but
yeah, another thing that I always liked about it was, I get Greg kind of alluded to it earlier, just the keeping in touch with some friends, getting reacquainted, the camaraderie, stuff like that, and then winning, and you get the bragging rights and everything. And some leagues even do trophies and stuff like that, which we were kind of thinking of getting into. And it's just a lot of interaction and a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's just, if you're a person that likes competition, and I think I definitely am, and it's fun in that aspect of it, And it is a lot more fun when you're doing with people that you know. I've done it I've done fantasy football with some of the just with just some of the general leagues where it's like no one you really know, and that's okay. It's not nearly as fun. And once we started this league up, it got a lot more exciting, a lot more on the line when you know the person that you're losing to is going to be like, so how'd last week go? Yeah. But
yeah, that's a good point actually, because it is kind of boring if you're playing people you don't know.
Yeah, so I've done, and actually I'm a commissioner of 2 leagues. I'm a commissioner of our league, and I also have a work league that I do, which is going to be crazy.
There is only one league, Dan.
I know.
You cheating on us for another league?
It's only, it's not anything serious. I don't like them like that. I don't like them.
It doesn't
like
mean
you
anything.
It doesn't mean anything. But that one's like a 16-team league, which is going to be crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's when the slim pickings happen, and that's when also the fun happens. And two, it's if you're in work, and it's funny because I feel like it's a thing that you can talk to with a lot of bosses. It's football, and then something you can build some good camaraderie with, and it's definitely a good bonding experience in that end. But
not at my workplace, it isn't.
Yeah, it depends on your workplace, I would say. But I don't know, my workplace is a lot of football fans, and honestly, there's more women football fans than guys football fans. Their passion tends to override the guys, which is interesting. But I live in Baltimore, so it's a huge Ravens, like crazy central town, where a lot of purple everywhere, and it's disgusting because it's the Ravens. But I don't know why. I've tried to like the Ravens on so many occasions. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna root for them. I'm in the city. And I just can't. I don't know what it is. It's just something about them. It just bugs me. Like, I can root for the Orioles. I appreciate the Orioles, but the Ravens, it's just, they disgust me. I don't know. But yeah, anything else about fantasy football at all? There's a lot of strategy to it too, and like we mentioned, like you can spend hours upon hours. I listen to some fantasy football podcasts, but people spend like literally hours a day, or you can literally just set your league 15 minutes before kickoff, and often it's that person that wins. So
what up?
Exactly, Greg. Yeah. So
I actually used to do a lot of work with mine, but lately it's been kind of dwindling off, and I just do it at the last second while people are drafting.
Yeah, because after the draft you have your waiver pickups. People get injured. You try to get the next guy that's going to break out before he does. So it is a lot of strategy. It's a lot of like picking it up. And it's interesting because you see a lot of people trying to take fantasy football and fantasy sports and try to do it in other areas. Like there's this thing called the box office game that it's like a stock market game with box office dollars, which I tried, which is not nearly as interesting when it just doesn't work as well. There's something about fantasy football, and it makes games mean something that you would otherwise care nothing about. Like, the Browns are playing the Cleveland Browns are playing Cincinnati Bengals. 9 times out of 10, I would not care at all about that game, but I have AJ Green, so now I'm going to be interested in this game because I want to see how many points he's going to get me. So, we've seen like all TV ratings have been dropping, but TV ratings for football have been increasing a great deal because of fantasy football. So, I would say, like, honestly, if you're a geek and you've been thinking about it, try it out. I would say try it out with some friends if you can, because it's a lot more fun that way. Or if you want to, try it out. It's a good time. Honestly, it's interesting because it's a strategy game. There's a lot of strategy to it, but at the end of the day, you have very little effect on how well your team does. So it's super frustrating and super satisfying at the same time. But
yeah, definitely. There's a lot of strategy just in the like fact of how many points each position get. Like there's certain positions are better than others, like obviously running back and wide receiver and stuff like that. And then it's tricky when you're drafting because there's certain running backs and quarterbacks that are worth taking high, and there's some that aren't. So it's kind of like if those certain ones are gone, maybe then you pick a couple of wide receivers or something. So there's a lot of strategy there and trying to figure out what you're gonna do.
Yeah, and
some people can go crazy with it, and then other people can just, not show up to the draft and let the program pick it for them and end up with a good team. So
yeah, it's interesting too because you talked about that, and it's something like, oh, this player ranks higher than this other player, but his position is a lot thinner, so maybe I should go with wide receiver here because the next wide receiver is 3 times as worse. Or there's a lot of strategy there to it. Strategery. So are there any like quick tips or anything like that you would say if someone's starting fantasy football for the first time today? Anything you think like you're just some basic golden rules they should follow to make their lives easier?
Pay attention to the buys.
Good point.
I feel like not a lot of people do that, and then it comes time where they have a lot of people on a buy. Like they'll have like 5 or 6 people on a buy, and that's something you really should have kept track of when you were drafting, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I've done that.
It's a tough call because you get the benefit of having those good players for every other game, but for that 1 week when they're off, you really suffer.
Yeah. It's almost like, do you say, okay, this 1 week I'm going to be done, but then every other week I'm going to be good. So you kind of almost plan it to like, okay, this is going to be my dive week, but everything else I'll be okay with. So
yeah.
And I would say I do think paying attention to bias is huge, but I would also say don't pay a huge amount of attention to schedule overall, because a lot of people will say like, oh, they have a really tough schedule. Well, with the NFL, a really tough schedule on September 1st is a lot different than a really tough schedule on December 1st.
Exactly.
So that team that was amazing last year may not nearly be as good the next year after that. So don't pay a huge amount of attention to the schedule, because that can drive you crazy. If you think like, oh, they're playing all bad teams, and then that bad team wins the Super Bowl that year. So it does happen.
I do have a couple things to add. I mean, obviously, like I mentioned, your running backs and your wide receivers are going to get you the most points. A couple of select quarterbacks like Peyton Manning's and Drew Brees and stuff like that. But your kickers and your defenses are not as important as far as the draft goes. Like, pick them last because they score the least amount of points. But you don't have to worry so much about knowing who all the good ones are, because all the sites that do this, they really make it easy for the players. Like, everything is ranked. They give you there's links to advice and everything on who to pick and stuff. So it's really simplified for everybody.
Yeah.
To the point where there's a ton of people out there that play fantasy football that know nothing about football, and they have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
What up when I started? You learn as the season goes on, as you're invested.
Yeah. And then one thing I would say also is throughout the year, pick up free agents throughout your season. Go with the hot player, because you're allowed to drop players from your team and pick up other guys that no one has. So if there's a guy that's playing really well, no one has, pick him up, because if he's doing well, more than likely his team's going to be using him a lot too in real life. So, go with the hot player and pick those guys up and play them for a couple of weeks. And if they fade off, drop them, pick up another hot player,
Yeah, very true. Some things I would mention is don't let fandom get in your way. So by that I mean, I'm a huge Giants fan. Guess what I'm not going to do? Draft Eli Manning. Because I know that, I want him to succeed in real life, but him succeeding in fantasy are two different things. So don't draft people who are big fans of a certain team, so they want to draft all those players. Don't do that, because sometimes you end up overvaluing players on your favorite team because you think they're better than they really are. So
is it a bad idea that I don't pick up anybody from the New England Patriots because I hate them?
Well,
I do the same thing. So
I think that's a little different. I think that's a little bit more acceptable. So
between us, we have 3 championships, so we can't be doing that much wrong.
Yeah.
Welcome, Dan. I made up for you.
That's my final advice. Don't draft anyone from the Patriots, and you will be fine.
Yeah, I understand that more. I hate the Eagles. I don't know if I've ever drafted an Eagles player. I honestly probably would, though. If I had the opportunity to draft McCoy, I probably would. It depends more so on the player. I would never draft Deshaun Jackson because I hate that guy. So I would, even if he succeeded, I'd feel dirty about it. So I wouldn't do it. He's such an awful human being.
Didn't he ask out Rihanna or something like that? He was creeping around her limo at this one event.
He sounds like it. He sounds.
I don't know. I saw it on TV the one day.
But yeah, that's huge. Pay attention to the waiver wire. There's you'll see a lot of the sites do like the hot pickups for that week. Definitely look at that. If you're drafting a player that gets hurt a lot, like a running back that's prone to injury, often draft their backup late rounds. And also, I think the biggest thing is just have fun with it. So be willing to trade players, be willing to pick things up, like just have fun with it. Some people, I think, don't do any type of trading or anything like that because they're too scared. But at the end of the day, just have fun with it. So, if you want to try to be your GM and not do anything and just keep your team, that's fine. But I think it's a little bit more enjoyable when you try to put up a perfect trade that you end up getting good value for and stuff like that. So I think that's huge. Just enjoy yourself. So, and trash talking is always great. So
our league isn't too prevalent with trash talk, except for when my brother's girlfriend came in and just randomly started doing it to people she had no idea who they were.
I think this year we'll have more though, with more people. So we'll see.
Yeah,
it'll be fun. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to hear a lot of people's fantasy football stories because I know there's some craziness that some people go to some extent. And regarding fantasy football, there's a great show centered on it called The League that Greg, I think you're a huge fan of.
I love that. I'm so behind on watching it, especially since it went to FXX, whatever the fuck that is. But I try to keep up with it on Netflix, but they haven't updated it in forever, and it is the fucking funniest thing ever. You don't even need to be into fantasy football to get the jokes that are going on.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of great fantasy football podcasts that you can check out. I don't need to tell you what they are, but I mean, a lot of ESPN has a few good ones too that are enjoyable to listen to, get advice for. So, and ESPN 18 channels, they always have different fantasy football shows going on all the time. So, and there's a lot of different places that do fantasy football. We tend to do it on Yahoo. I know ESPN's another big one. I would say stick away. One year we did it on EA Sports website, and that was awful. Don't do it on there.
I think they're done already. I don't think they do it anymore.
Yeah, that did not go well. And there's a few others, but I don't know. But it's a good time. I will say I'm really excited to get it started. I'm looking forward to the draft. It should be a big contest. So, but now that we talked about fantasy football, let's throw some projections out there with the real NFL football, and we're not going to go in great detail. We're just going
because I know nothing.
We're just going to keep it basics. Let's just think of this way. We're just going to think about Super Bowl champions. Who's going to be facing off in the Super Bowl? If we want to throw out who we think might be MVP, we can do that too. And if you think there's any teams that will be the worst in the league or some surprise teams in any way, shape, or form. So Chuck, I guess I'll start with you here. Any projections you have for this upcoming NFL season?
Yes. Let's see. Let's just start with here. I'll do my Super Bowl last. I'll kind of build up the suspense. I guess I'll start with my MVP of the season, which will be different from my MVP of the Super Bowl, but that's usually the MVP of the season is the best overall player in the league, technically the most valuable to his team, but usually the best player in the league. And I think it's going to end up being LaShawn McCoy this year, the Eagles. Thinking he might have a huge year. I don't know. It's kind of going out on a limb, but we'll see. And I guess some disappointments, which isn't necessarily the worst teams in the league, but just ones that I think are supposed to be decent or are supposed to be good, but I think they're going to kind of drop off. And I think some of those are going to be teams like the Carolina Panthers. I'm thinking they might drop off a little bit. The Cowboys, I really don't see them going anywhere this year.
Sorry, that was me clapping.
Dan likes that one because they're in the Giants division. Yeah, they lost some key guys on defense there. They already had, I think, the 32nd ranked defense last year.
Yeah.
And they lost a couple of guys, so they, hopefully you don't make a liar out of me, but I think they're going to be terrible.
And Tony Romo is my favorite player because...
Yeah, in the fourth quarter, he ends up switching teams somehow and, throws the balls to the other team. But and I think the Cardinals, who were actually a surprise last year, who were really good, I think are going to be a bit of a disappointment this year because they lost some really key guys on defense. some star players, and I think that's going to hurt them a lot. And maybe somebody like Kansas City too. I think they might fade off a little bit. But surprises, I got to go with my Dolphins. I think they might sneak in into the playoffs as the last wild card there, possibly. I think the Bears are going to be pretty good. They're going to be a lot improved from last year. I think the Texans are going to be very improved after winning only 2 games last year. So there's a couple of surprises that I think might not necessarily be in the top tier, but I think will be better and surprise some people.
Greg, anything for you? I know you don't.
The Raiders are going to suck, of course. I think that's that's a given. They pretty much suck every year.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think San Diego, now with a new head coach, might make some improvements here and there. I think the Steelers are going to kind of stay where they are at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't think they're going to do any vast improvements because I didn't really see anything that they did during the offseason that would have improved the team. I think that stays about where they are. I think Jets are going to be a disappointment again until they get rid of Rex Ryan. That team just hasn't done anything to really improve themselves. I think they stayed with everything they had last year, and I think they're just gonna change stuff up coaching wise. I guess
they did
I
pick
don't know.
up Michael Vick, and
He did jack shit with Philly though.
Yeah, I mean their biggest pickup was probably Eric Decker, but I don't think Eric Decker is.
No, he's not going to make that. The greatest thing about Eric Decker was Peyton Manning.
Yeah, and they picked up Chris Johnson, who I think is. I don't know. I think he's a little overrated and not going to do.
He is overrated.
The one year I picked corner Browner.
Yeah.
Well, cornerback doesn't make up a whole good team, so they're going to have to get rid of Rex Ryan this year. I was surprised he stayed around for as long as he has. I'm really surprised about that. I'm praying and hoping that the Patriots do just as good as they did last year because they weren't that great.
Well, they made it fairly far.
Yeah, but they haven't done as good as they have been. They haven't been this epic team that they have been previous years.
I just really want them to drop away off. I hope they just.
Well, I think it'll be a descent. I don't think it's going to be as a vertical descent as you're hoping for, Chuck. I think it's a slight descent.
I don't want to curse it. I don't want to.
I think Bill Belichick will look as scummy as usual.
Yeah, I'm going to take him a couple of great.
He looks like friggin' hobo during every game.
He went for the Bill Belichick podcast.
It's all mumbling. Turn your speakers up, people.
I got nothing to talk about. Yeah, we'll just keep going. Yeah.
And I think for my last one, I'll say that San Francisco isn't going to be as good, even as good as last year, which wasn't that great.
I can agree with that. Definitely.
Yeah, they lost a huge amount of defensive players. I think they just lost another one the other day for injury. So I agree. I don't think San Francisco really is going to be what they were.
Yeah, they just had that one good season, and that was kind of miraculous, I think.
Yeah, I think they'll still be there, but not necessarily. I don't think they'll be nearly. They won't go to the championship game like they did last year.
Yeah,
they were in the championship game for 3 straight years, the NFC Championship, but
they're like the new Eagles that did that for like 4 years in a row.
Can't get over that hump, you know.
Yeah. Giants had to beat them.
That lovely lady lump.
But yeah, so some of mine. I think regarding disappointments, I actually think the Kansas City Chiefs are gonna take a step back this year. I think last year was kind of like a fluke year. I just don't see them having the same success as they did previously. I think their schedule's a little bit tougher, so I don't. I think they'll still be decent, maybe make the playoffs, but I think they were only lost a few games last year, and I don't see that happening. For some good surprises, I think the Buccaneers will actually maybe even win that division that they're in. That division's always all over the place, and they've made a lot of good moves. They have a better quarterback now. They have a strong running game, a good defense, a young team that's been improving, some good weapons. So I think the Buccaneers are going to be one of those teams to look out for. I think Greg is on the money with the 49ers. Their defense has just been so just decimated with people leaving and injury and that's been their crux. That's really what's been keeping them around was their defense and their running game. And Frank Gore is another year older, and I think Kaepernick's kind of lost that Superman appeal that he's had for a while. I think he's just not been as a dynamic of a player, so I don't see them doing as well. I do think the Dolphins will do better this year. I think Tannehill is improving as a quarterback. I think Mike Wallace, with another year in that system, is going to probably have more of a presence known. So I think that is a possibility. I think the Giants will probably be pretty awful this year. As much as I would love to say that's not the true case, I just don't see them doing very well. And I do agree with Chuck that the Eagles are probably going to have another strong year under their belt. And McCoy is a good choice for MVP. But honestly, I think my choice, because I think the team that's really about to break out is that of the Indianapolis Colts. I think Andrew Luck he's ready to become a superstar. And I think this is the year that it happens. And then I see him walking away with the MVP. And I know a lot of talk is going to people like RG3 and Geno Smith and whatnot. But I think Luck is really head and shoulders above all of them. And he also looks like the caveman from Geico. So I think that.
I was gonna grow a neck beard.
So that also helps him a great deal. But no, I think the Colts are gonna be great. He's got a lot more weapons. Hakeem Nicks, who has been kind of awful for the Giants last year, I think though he might show some promise for the Colts, and maybe a new team will help him out a little bit. Maybe Trent Richardson would actually, not suck as bad as he did last year. But yeah, nothing else. I don't know if there'll be any other huge changes. I'm hoping the Falcons, they have a huge bounce back year. I think last year was with injuries, they kind of, they ran into a few things, but yeah.
I got to ask the big question here.
Yep.
That ESPN seems to be revolving around like the sun.
LeBron James.
That is, how is Johnny Manziel going to do?
He's going to get water and he's going to watch from the sidelines.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler at holding the clipboard.
Playing Madden on his phone while he watches.
I think he might get in the game a little bit after a few games because I think the fans will be demanding it, but I don't see him being a great quarterback, especially not right away. But he just seems like he's too quick to scramble, you know what I mean? He doesn't go through his reads and everything, but
he to me seems like another like a Tim Tebow in a lot of ways, where he's just not. I don't know. He seems not to have the physical skills of someone like an Andrew Luck, or he's really fast and quick, but so is everyone in the NFL. Like he's not outrunning someone like Jason Pierre-Paul or some of the quicker J.J. Watt or some of these people. Like he doesn't. I think he's going to kind of come and go. And if the history of the Browns quarterbacks tells us anything, it's that
they are the Browns.
I kind of compare him to somebody like Vince Young. Like I think he maybe he'll have one good season.
Yeah. And
then spend a few as a backup, and then you kind of won't hear much out of him anymore.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I think he'll be a better fantasy quarterback than real life quarterback because he'll get a lot of rushing yards. But I don't think he'll be very accurate, or he'll be able to stand up to the physicality of the NFL game. I don't know. I just don't think he has it in him like that. I think he's a lot of hype and not much else. So.
Who knows? I could be completely dead wrong because he might turn out to be like a Doug Flutie or something like that, and just be.
That's true.
Just be money, but.
Or even like a Drew Brees, who a lot of people. But I don't know. To me, I don't think he's worth the hype that he's getting. So I think Blake Bortles is going to be a better quarterback than he will be, but he just doesn't have the hype behind him.
I think he'll be really good, Chuck, in the Canadian League.
But yeah.
Will he be with that guy from remember the Wrestling Football League?
The XFL.
XFL.
Yeah. You hate me?
The one guy's name was He Hate Me.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The XFL. Man.
That lasted a long time.
Yeah, that. Did you ever watch that?
I think.
I watched
a year. One game of that.
1 year.
It was. They had a lot of interesting ideas, and some of ideas that the NFL actually took, like the camera that they use now, like the overhead camera, that was actually started with the XFL. But besides that, it was really stupid.
I could be wrong here, but I feel like a lot of that was Vince McMahon's ego of thinking he could overtake the NFL in popularity or something.
Oh yeah.
It's crashed and burned like horribly.
Definitely.
It looked like high school games, to be quite honest.
They did. They had a few decent players, like Tommy Maddox. Like I think that he won the Super Bowl, like the whatever bowl for the XFL, and he ended up coming into the league and doing pretty well for the Steelers. But God, the XFL. I've not thought about that in a long time.
He Hate Me became, he changed his name to He Unemployed.
All right, so now the moment of truth. Who are we picking for the Super Bowl? The who's playing and who's winning? Chuck, we started with you last time, so let's start with you now. Who are you going with?
Well, I'm going to go with the sexy pick that everybody's kind of on right now. I think the Denver Broncos are going to be back. I can't go against Peyton. The guy's just like incredible. And even though he's like at the end of his career, he's somehow like in his prime. Like the guy is just insane right now. He's operating on a whole another level, even above Brady, in my opinion. But I like the Broncos to make it back in the AFC. There's a lot of stiff competition in the AFC. Like, Greg mentioned the Patriots might be falling off a bit. So I'm looking at teams like the Bengals and the Colts, like Dan mentioned. They're going to give some pretty good competition there in the AFC. But I like Denver to make it back. And I think I'm really going to go out on a limb for my NFC pick because we mentioned, the 49ers dropping off. I don't like Seattle to make it back. It's just so hard to get back there, and I think they were a very good team last year, but I think they got a little bit lucky too. And I think I'm gonna go with the New Orleans Saints from the NFC.
Interesting.
Which I could be. That's a very dangerous pick because I feel like that's a team that could like be really good or totally suck.
Yeah.
So
if they get home field, they're nearly unbeatable. But
yeah,
I think their division is going to be pretty tough this year. I think that's
they were in the playoffs last year. I know, like I mentioned, I think Carolina is going to be a bit of a disappointment. So I think, in my opinion, New Orleans takes that division this year. And they were in the playoffs last year. They lost to Seattle. So I think maybe they kind of get over that hump and make it back to the Super Bowl. But I look for Denver to win it all. I think probably not going to happen, but it makes the most sense to me right now. And I'd pick Peyton for the MVP. So,
all right, I'll go to me next, or I'll go to myself next, and I'm gonna like you ran the Broncos bandwagon. I'm gonna keep with my Colts theme, and I'm gonna say the Colts go all the way this year. I could see the Broncos going. I think it's tough to repeat even going again twice. And I think with Wes Welker being hurt, I think that might hurt the Broncos a little bit. And they also brought in a lot of defensive players. And they lost Rogers Cromartie, which I think was a huge key to their defense. So I think his presence is going to hurt them a great deal in the secondary. So I think that I'm going to go with the Colts. Like I said, I think Andrew Luck it's his time. And for the NFC, and this is going to hurt a lot, and it's going to hurt a great deal. But the more I look at it, just when you look at like who has the best path to it, who's in the weakest division, who has the best chance of winning that division, and who was the most successful last year, I gotta go with. Unfortunately, this hurts a lot, but I gotta go with the Eagles.
Wow.
Yeah, I just think, in all honesty, NFC East is probably the weakest division in football right now. And they're clearly the best team, so that if you win your division, that's a playoff spot. So that's huge. I think that's going to be key. I think the other divisions, the NFC, a little stricter, tougher. So I think that's going to be easier for the Eagles to get home field advantage, which doesn't mean nearly as much as it used to, but it at least gives you that bye. And their offense is dynamic. Their defense is rather strong. They're a really balanced team. So, and if I'm wrong, thank you, God. So, I will pick the Colts to win it all. So,
interesting.
So Greg, what about yourself?
Well, I think the Broncos will make it back. Don't ask me why. I'm going with gut feeling. Don't take any of the stuff that I'm saying seriously. And so for the NFC, I'm thinking that the Green Bay Packers are going to make a comeback. Don't know why, they just are.
You sound like an analyst for ESPN.
That's right, I do.
Did you discount double check that? Or?
Yes, I did discount double check that, and while I'm working at ESPN, I'm making out with Aaron Andrews, and I think
taking
the Broncos,
probiotics.
Yes, taking probiotics up the butt.
Oh God, I heard that about her.
I thought that has the reverse effect. I'm not sure though.
No, for Aaron Andrews, it's going to have the exact opposite effect. And I'll take the Broncos and Peyton being MVP, finally getting it.
Woot, woot. All right, so we got Broncos and wow, I forgot who you said, Chuck. The Broncos and the New Orleans for Chuck. We got the Colts and the Eagles for me, and the Broncos and the Green Bay Packers for Greg. So it'll be kind of cool to see how well that plays out. We'll show
mine not well at all.
Well, I mean, both are solid teams, I would say. So
I'm not feeling great about mine either. I may be letting my emotions get in the way a bit, but yeah. I really want to see Peyton get another Super Bowl, but
I'm thinking pessimistically that if I pick the Eagles, that they will be the worst team in the NFL. So, and then be like, oh darn, I got that one wrong.
That's a shame.
Never mind. I changed my mind. It's going to be the Raiders versus Carolina Panthers.
Oh.
No,
right.
Raiders, Rams. That's what it's going to be.
Well, I'm sure we'll keep you updated, and I'm sure you'll hear us talking fantasy football throughout the year as we get some of our matchups. So, but before we bring this episode to a close, we'd like to end each episode with a letter. And this time, Chuck, you're up. So, what is your letter about this week?
My letter is pertaining to an event that we're all going to be attending this coming weekend, and that, of course, is the Baltimore Comic Convention.
Nice.
I know we're all looking forward to that a great deal. It's always a good time. So I thought I would just write a letter to the organizers of the Baltimore Comic Convention.
Chuck's going to get us kicked out before we even get there.
No, it's a very positive, very positive letter. I really like what they do there, and I've read some articles about them and stuff like that, and they're very well received and well respected in the convention community, so to speak. So here's my letter. Dear Baltimore Comic-Con, being the avid comic book fans that the three of us are, and since we will be attending the convention this very weekend, I wanted to take an opportunity to thank all of you for putting together such a terrific and truly authentic comic convention. You are one of the few large conventions left in America that is focused on comic books and their creators. None of the hoopla, none of the distractions of celebrities, actors, or big-budget movies. It truly is a living, breathing tribute to the people who work so hard every day to put out top-quality funny books. And a tribute to the fans as well. With no big distractions, fans can really focus on meeting and talking to their favorite writers and artists and hitting all the great comic-related panels. It's a great opportunity to get a small peek into the world that is behind the universe. This, in the 15th year of the event, is the first time the con has been extended to 3 days. By demand of the fans, of course. The attendance has been increasing at the Baltimore Comic-Con with almost every subsequent year. So, of course, the next logical step was to offer an extra day for comic goodness. Thank you for keeping your finger on the pulse of the driving force of the industry, those loyal and fun-loving fans. The continued success of this con is a testament to the popularity of the comics themselves. Not just the summer blockbusters and the famous actors and wrestlers and directors. And the growing success of the event is proof that the industry is far from dead, but rather more alive than it's ever been. Of course, Hollywood has brought in some new fans, but more and more are beginning to see the magic that started it all. For me personally, it was my first chance to meet one of my favorite writers and artists, Jim Starlin. And the coming event holds many opportunities for me to meet some more of my favorites, something I wasn't sure that I would ever get the chance to do. I know all three of us here on Talking in Circles enjoy this con a great deal, and we're looking forward to this weekend very much. So again, a big thank you to the organizers of the Baltimore Comic-Con, and thanks for keeping the focus on what it's all about, the creators and the fans. Sincerely, the crew from Talking in Circles.
So beautiful, man.
And of course, I'd like to add, if any listeners out there get a chance, the weekend of September 5th, 2014, or any other year for that matter, and you love comic books from any publisher, I highly recommend stopping by the Baltimore Comic-Con. It's really an epic, comic-centric convention that won't disappoint for sure. I mean, there's just so much focus on the creators and the comics, and the panels are the direction of where comics are going in the future. So it's really like an authentic comic convention, which is very refreshing.
Yeah, definitely. And also thank you to Baltimore Comic-Con, because it kind of made us official, because we actually will have press passes this con, which is kind of cool, which, I don't know how hard it is to get it for Baltimore Comic-Con, but hey, they're nice enough to give them, so we're nice enough to respond with a thank you. And you might be thinking, oh, that's the only reason you're saying good things about them, which is not the case, because I never expected to get that, and we've been going there. This is our second year, honestly, and it's just, you talk to anyone, and honestly, they'll point to Baltimore Comic-Con. It's one of the best ones to go to, just because, like Chuck mentioned, very much is comic-centric, and a lot of great writers and artists, and it's just a really cool environment overall. So
I can't believe they think we're press, though.
Hey,
Hey, we got a lot of influence, we have an ever increasing audience here,
Very true, very true. So, but yeah, if you're in the area, definitely hit us up. I should be wearing one of Greg's Talking in Circles t-shirts with has my face on it, which is a little bit narcissistic, but what are you gonna do?
Hopefully I will have them done by then, because I didn't make them yet. This is actually, when we're recording this, is the 28th of August, and I'm going to be working on it this weekend. So hopefully, and it's my first time doing screen printing, so hopefully I have it done.
Well, you should be able to notice our faces from our orange logo, so yeah. there's really no excuse there. No.
I'll have to make my hair spiky all the time so people recognize it's me.
But
we have to match it with facial hair too that we have in that picture.
All right. So anything else before we bring this episode to a close?
Nah, I'm good here.
I'm good.
All right. Well, that'll bring it to the end of this week. We appreciate those that stuck out and listened to football talk for a while. We promise we won't do it every week, but occasionally, you gotta throw it a little bit in there. But if you want to get in contact with us, there's tons of different ways. You can comment on the episode post by going to geekcastradio.com or nerdly.co.uk. You can also email us at feedback@geekcastradio.com. We're on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Talking in Circles, GCRN. I'm also on Twitter at Movie Revolt. And Greg, what is your Twitter name?
It is at The Create Forge.
And Chuck is, again, only on Twitter in spirit. What? So that'll be it for this week. We'll be back next week. Same time, same channel, same podcast feed. But for now,
this has been Chuck.
This has been Greg, or Tom Hardy with a bigger downstairs area.
He's got a big basement. And this has been Dan. We've been Talking in Circles. We will see you next week.
I store a lot of stuff in my basement.
Did you do some remodeling down there? Or?
No remodeling. No, I don't play those type of games. I like to keep it original, OG.
Is it finished off? Do you keep it well maintained? Or?
Yeah, it's finished. I need to go down there and dust a little bit, though. I think that would
get some cobwebs, huh?
Yeah, just a little bit. They need to be taken out a little bit.
So in the basement,
long-leggers?
Does the carpet in the basement match the drapes? Is that the thing?
Yeah, I have a low-cut shag carpeting that I try and keep it at. I try and go with more natural colors, but I do match the carpets and drapes. And what's that?
Hope you got a dehumidifier. It usually gets pretty damp down there.
Yeah. I have the doors open at all time to keep the air flowing through really nice. Yeah, I keep the windows open and just try and keep things loose down there and feeling good.
Does anyone live down there at all?
2 guys live down there. They're kind of big guys. They're big. But they drag their feet a lot. Just
2 sweaty guys just hanging out.
Yep.
It'll happen. They're gonna get
They're very sensitive about things. So you can't say anything to them.
They get really testy.
They do.